Logical family is a term gay writer Armistead Maupin invented to refer to people who are not biological family but love each other through the joys and pains of life. Anybody familiar with him? And for queer communities, logical family has been and still is very much a necessity today, as their families and communities of origin have sometimes rejected them. There is another person who most likely you will know believed in logical family, and that was Jesus. You know him, right? You know him, Ref? Okay. I didn't hear you respond yes. Oh, okay. All right. Now, Jesus says this when responding to a moment in his life when his own mother and brothers were asking for him. And you might remember this because I touched on this the last time I preached. But he says, or he responds, "Who is my mother and who are my brothers?" Pointing to his disciples, he responds and says, "Here are my mother and my brothers." Interesting that Jesus explicitly uses the word mother. Did Jesus have a mother in his traveling logical family? Or was he the mother of his unruly brood of followers? I recently just finished watching this show called Pose, P-O-S-E, that you could watch and stream through FX. Anybody familiar with the show? All right. So if I'm speaking to them over there, I'm good. The rest of you, I'm very sorry if you don't follow. But I've been transformed by this show. It has reminded me of what it is to love not only those of your own biological family, but really what it truly means to be community for one another. And I am not exaggerating when I say that there's not one episode on this show that I'm not wiping my tears away. The idea of mothers and families is at the center of Ryan Murphy's latest blockbuster series, Pose. It is a series about the ball culture of the 1980s, and I'm going to try my best to picture this time for you because it is hard because there's so much to it. So, Reverend Penny, feel free to step in and correct me on something. But the ball culture of the 1980s, which again, I only know because of this show. I haven't done my research or read books, but this show is about a community of Black and Latina and Latino fashion divas, Vogue dancers, and drag performers in Harlem. And believe me, I almost asked Reverend Penny we could use the procession to do some voguing and some performance here one day. Okay. Because it is quite spiritual. So the balls themselves, as I already touched on, are a part fashion show, part dance contest. The contestants walk the ball in a dizzying array of categories like femme queen realness, executive realness, and face. There are different qualities of femininity, masculinity, and social position that contestants dress up as or otherwise inhabit to the cheers and judgment of the bar goers. Are you picturing this already? No? Okay. Well, maybe you will. Ball performers see the illusion created in the ballroom as real, and the false selves they have to show to get by in the outside world as fake. If someone believes she is Beyonce, she can live that persona in the ballroom, even if the rest of the world doesn't acknowledge her. Bar culture is also based on houses, which is what grabs my attention more than anything on this show. A family of bar performers overseen by a house mother. Membership in the house is based not only on talent, but on the individual need. When Jesus says, whatever you have done for the least of these, you have done for me, I can't help but think over and over when I see these episodes that he are talking about these people, the children of the ball scene. These are queer people of color who are frequently on the fringe of more assimilated forms of gay culture and estranged from their families of origin. Many house members are trans and may be going through a process of gender transition by taking hormones or scrapping together money for gender confirmation surgeries. This community is also highly susceptible to HIV/AIDS. And in the 1980s, as many of you know, especially Reverend Penny, as we know, there were no effective treatments for the disease. A diagnosis was a death sentence. So this is where the show starts, 1987. As a series protagonist, Blanca Rodriguez goes to a clinic where she is diagnosed as HIV positive. She accepts the news with stoic silence, but realizes she needs to get on with fulfilling her dreams in the time she has left. Blanca is from the house of abundance, overseen by the beautiful but imperious mother Electra. But what ends up eventually happening is Blanca breaks away from that house of abundance to start her own house, which she calls a house of Evangelista. The next scenes are like the calling of the disciples. So she has her house of Evangelista. And as Blanca gathers misfits and cast-offs to form her new home, she finds Damon, a Pennsylvania boy who was beaten by his biological father and kicked out of his suburban Pennsylvania home by his Christian parents, who decided for God that Damon is not worthy of life, of their love. Good Christian neighbors watch at a distance as the sinful son was thrown out of the house for the sake of the family's dignity, but has aspirations of being a professional dancer. Damon's story is a common one, almost universal in feeling. You learn later in the show that Blanca Evangelista, who adopts Damon, left her family for similar reasons. Her queerness. Her Puerto Rican family and African American family share their Christian faith of hatred for the queer kids. Blanca also picks up Angel, another house of abundance, cast off, who has been making a living as a stripper and prostitute. Damon's homeless boyfriend, Ricky, and another street kid named Papi round out the group, the family, and that group become the house of Evangelista. And then there is the unofficial father figure of the family, who is the MC of the ball circuit, who goes by the name Pray Tell. What a name. Makes me want to change my name to Reverend Pray Tell, who's played by the magnificent Billy Porter. Are you inspired to watch the show so far? I hope you are. That's really what I'm doing here. Evangelizing Pose. From the perspective of the theology that the protagonist families follow, which is really hard for me, picturing kind of Jesus doing the same thing in his life, right? Walking around and identifying people and inviting them to his understanding of what home is and community. Their children's of this family of the house Evangelista, flamboyant souls are the epitome of sinfulness. The AIDS epidemic that took away many of them, the queer and especially the queer of color was, according to those who preach hatred, a proof that God hates those who are gay. And so again, this show speaks loudly, a series about these abandoned queer individuals who came to New York in the 1980s to run away from their hateful families, would have nothing to do with Christianity except that they had to run away from it. So I want to touch on the Christian name of Blanca's house, the one she establishes after she leaves the house of abundance, where she had been adopted, as I already mentioned, by the daughter, by Electra, the legendary queen of the ballroom world. So what does Blanca's house of Evangelista evangelize? What is its theology? Well, first, faith in the improvement of the living conditions of her community, and the flourishing of her work and alternate family building with abandoned queer individuals and the possibility of their rebirth. Blanca put it this way to Damon. She tells him this: the house is a family you got to choose. Then there is hope. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the show. Unlike so many portrayals of queer people of color, Pose does not try to win cheap sympathy of the poverty-porn kind by showing the pain of the others as spectacle, you see? The queer and trans people of color are not merely victims of discrimination and repression. They are protagonists of the story whose struggles are fought not only with dignity, but with glamour. It is not the hope for a coming Messiah, Savior. This lesson is painfully learned by Angel, Blanca's sister, when they were living in the house of abundance, and now a daughter in the house of Evangelista. Angel has a short-lived romance with Stan, a white man from the suburbs who aspires to become someone in the Trump Tower. When Blanca tells Angel about her HIV status and asks Angel to become mother of the house, to continue to lead the house, to make sure people still continue to love one another, she adds, this. No white boy from the suburbs is going to rescue you. An angel who is like a messenger of God gets and sends out this message. Stan finds Angel outside the ballroom and tells her, I came to rescue you. An angel gives him a firm, the only thing I need rescue is the way you made me feel. There is no Messiah ex machina, but rather we have each other's back. This is the outstanding quality of the show because it truly speaks out to us amidst today's rising cruelty towards those who are black, brown, trans, Muslim, or migrant. It is a show that reminds us how to be courageous and not afraid to truly welcome those who may seem like a stranger at first. Brazilian philosopher and anthropologist Eduardo Viveiros de Castro, writing about our ecological crisis, alerts us to learn survival strategies from the Amerindians, whose world was destroyed 500 years ago by colonialism. Similarly, I believe Pose not only shows us how that is done, but teaches us that we have something to learn from those who survived the AIDS epidemic in the queer community. Now, there's a huge spoiler coming, but I promise you it's still worth watching the show. I don't know if I've truly recovered from this ending. There's 2 seasons. The second one just started. Haven't seen that one yet. The show ends with Blanca winning the Mother of the Year trophy of the ballroom. The award speech is given by its legendary host, Pray Tell, whose role RuPaul, the American actor, singer, and drag queen, would later popularize. Pray Tell, more like St. Paul than RuPaul, describes Blanca's qualities in theological language for me. He says this: Blanca has saved many a soul lost in darkness simply by shining her light. I know this is true because that is how she saved mine. That light is love. And it put me to tears because, oh, how much I want to be much like Blanca. But not the self-centered love RuPaul suggests when she says in Drag Race, another great program, by the way, a 3-time Emmy Award-winning drag competition program. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. You will be transformed. In that show, in that program, RuPaul says, if you cannot love yourself, how in hell are you going to love somebody else? Amen. So no, for Blanca and Pray Tell and for Jesus, yes, I put them all together in that line. Love is taking care for one another, watching each other's back, fighting for one another. Blanca's theology of hope is based on this love. Love for others, which is also for St. Paul, the strongest among the 3. Faith, hope, and love. Amen.